Steve Nichol was the original founder of the group, which became Loose Ends after being joined by Jane Eugene and Carl McIntosh. Now, Steve has an incredible history from his classical training, which took him to the States at a very young age, to working as a model, playing on tour with Paul Weller, and, of course, eventually forming a band that would go on to become one of the most well-loved, laid-back R&B bands of the 80s.
It's definitely my band. It's my concept, my idea. We sat down one day and decided to just put an S on the end, and that way we couldn't get sued. The deal initially was just for 3 singles. It was touch and go until Mick Clark had the idea of getting in Nick Martinelli. And it was only with Nick agreeing to do the project that we were given an album deal. It started to change towards the end. It was just stressful and stressful.
So what happens at Stevie Wonder's house? Now, stick with me for that interview with Steve Nichol. And if you want, check out on popthehistorymakers.com the interview with Carl McIntosh. It's interesting to see the different perspectives that they both have about the band Loose Ends. Now, don't forget to like, subscribe, and if you can, become a member. It all helps me continue this podcast. Now, here's Steve Nichol. So, Steve Nichol, welcome. I want to start right at the beginning and really find out a bit about your family unit and being brought up.
Well, I was born in Clapham in London. I'm one of 3 3 boys, and basically lived in Clapham until I was about 7, 6 or 6, I think, 6, 7, then moved to Peckham, to Nunhead. And stayed in Nunhead for the best part of about 30 odd years.
But were you brought up by, did you have both parents? Because I sort of
both parents. I was brought up by both mum and dad. But my mum went away when I was about 12 to New York to work with her sister as a nurse, and then I became the man of the house. I had to go and do all the cooking and everything, shopping and everything like that. So yeah, it was mainly two-parent family, but mum was mainly in New York all the time.
So when you were brought up, let's say before your mum left, because the early life, what sort of music did they listen to? What you were surrounded by?
We used to have a lot of Jim Reeves, Nat King Cole in the house, mainly Nat King Cole, I think. Jim Reeves was only really at Christmas. Yeah, so that was what was going on in the household. There wasn't really anything musically until I was about 11, 10 or 11, where the church donated a piano to us. And that's when I started playing piano. Piano was in the hallway at home, and then it got moved to my bedroom.
Did you have lessons, or were you someone?
Did, yes. I did have lessons, yeah. I had lessons on the piano. From the time I was 11, and on the trumpet as well. So that's exactly what was going on when I was very young.
So this was your sort of first entree into music, but I know at school, you also were very musical at school.
Yeah, it was. We had a really, really good musical department at my secondary school, which was Thomas Apostle, and we actually went on a little mini tour to Malta when I was like 12, 13. Which was kind of crazy, playing in a little school band. But then by the time I was 13, I went to the College for Young Musicians because they saw me as had a talent for a trumpet piano. But I did trumpet mainly at the College for Young Musicians, progressed there to the London School Symphony Orchestra. And by the time I was 16, I was playing trumpet in the symphony orchestra, and we were doing a tour of America for the bicentennial celebrations. So it was the London School Symphony Orchestra as a part exchange with an American symphony orchestra, school symphony orchestra over here. So we got to stay in Bel Air and everything like that, LA, and we played in Hollywood, played at Hollywood Bowl, Orchestra Hall, Chicago, and also when we went to New York, we played at Carnegie Hall.
That's amazing. So you were playing classical music then, I presume?
Yes, I was playing mainly classical music.
What about the music that you heard yourself?
Well,
I was
listening to like Desmond Dekker, all this stuff, and then early Heatwave, I mean, every dance you'd go to, you'd be listening to what was current, So obviously that's what I'd be doing.
Was music an escape for you? Because if I remember my teenage years, it was very much about something I could identify with that wasn't my parents.
Yeah, it was definitely an escape, especially trying to when I'm playing the trumpet. It started off very badly, of course, just trying to get my embouchure together and getting notes out of the instrument. But once I started to play very well, the neighbours were applauding all the time. So that was a nice little escape for me, and the same thing with piano. Every time I started to play the piano, I was getting better and better and better. And I was getting accolades from the local neighbours and stuff.
So it gave you some sort of self-pride.
Yeah, exactly. Self-confidence, and I thought I found my little niche in life.
Because your mum was away, did your father sort of push you as, the three kids in the
Yeah, I
family?
mean, there's three boys, so he obviously would push us. I mean, mainly he was pushing us towards football because I could have been a footballer, but I had the choice of doing football or music, and I chose music. So
You ever regretted that?
no, never, never. I mean, if you're a footballer, the most you got is 10 years if you're very good. And then if you get an injury after 1 year, you're finished.
Was your teacher at school a sort of mentor to you?
Yes, my music teacher was a very big influence on me, Franz Buzatil. He was the one that influenced me to continue and to really pursue it. So, because every single prize day at school, I would be getting prizes for music and stuff, and it was good. I ended up being deputy head boy at school. It's really great.
I mean, it's interesting you said about your mother going away, because whenever I've sort of talked to very well-known people, there's something in the childhood that has given them the drive in their life. There's a lack that has given them the drive. Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah, but you know what's really strange was the drive and everything as well did come from my mother, because every single holiday, if I wasn't doing music during the holidays, I'll be in New York. And the situation is that it's a different atmosphere there, and you're listening to music 24/7 from the minute you get off the plane in New York. I mean, it's everywhere. And plus, where she lived in Queens, it was, rife for music. So it was great. Great, excellent influence.
Tell me about the different appeal. You mentioned it a little bit about when you started playing the trumpet about, using your mouth.
Embouchure.
And yeah, I couldn't think of the word. What was it again?
The embouchure. Your
Embouchure.
embouchure.
Okay.
Yeah.
But what sort of appealed differently about the different instruments?
Well, listening to Nat King Cole, you're listening to stuff like Louis Armstrong as well, and Dizzy Gillespie. And John Coltrane, but John Coltrane saxophone. But Dizzy Gillespie, I was always sort of fascinated by why the fact he kept on blowing his cheeks out when you didn't really need to blow your cheeks out for playing the trumpet. That's just how he developed his technique, by puffing his cheeks out. That's why they were so fat and big. But the true way to play the trumpet is not to blow your cheeks out. So, I mean, I was fascinated by all of that and exactly the sounds, and especially like with classical, it's a unique instrument, the trumpet. Now, I think, you can stand out if you're good, so that's why I decided to pursue it.
Because it's so different, because it's also like, whenever I see someone playing the trumpet, it's an extension of their body, isn't it?
Yeah, of course it is. Yeah, it is a part of you. It's your individualistic sound.
When you went to America, I think you said you were about 16, you're definitely a
Yeah,
teenager at the
16.
time.
Yeah.
And I
That's
mean,
that's the sorry, that's the first time with the orchestra. But obviously, I'd been going to America prior to that since I was about 11. So
yeah, but with the orchestra would have
with
been
the
a different
orchestra,
experience. And I presume it's an experience which must have changed you to a
it
certain
did
extent. So tell me what that
dramatically.
change was.
Well, the change was where I was actually staying in Bel Air was very, very bizarre, because 3 doors down from me was Steve McQueen, and my next door neighbor was Elliot Gould. Yeah, it's really, that definitely changed me, because I thought, I could actually get used to this sort of lifestyle, and the way things were. But then again, the way I am, it's just like seeing a next door neighbor. They really were like that. these people that were really up there in the say spotlight every day of their life. You know, the lady that I was staying with, her husband was a film director, and she had two big grand pianos in her front room back to back. So I used to play with her on the piano. She'd play and I'd play, and we'd do duets and stuff like that during the time I was staying in Bel Air, which was really, really bizarre.
I mean, it's amazing being dropped in that sort of
Yeah,
surreal
you are
Hollywood
dropped
American
in the deep end,
world.
basically. So you are dropped in the deep end, and you know there is nothing really that's going to phase you after that. It's a case of you plotting your route, I should say, in the business, or your route or direction where not to come unstuck, I think.
But your route took another turn, didn't it? Because a little bit
It,
later, you're a model. You
yeah,
know, could have been a footballer, was a massively successful musician with a band that I think everyone just loved because the music was great. And you were a model. So
yeah.
why model? Was it just
Well, I
about
was
money or?
modeling. You know, it was funny. Somebody asked me to do a fashion show, and I actually said yes, okay, I'll do the fashion show. But then it got better than that. I kept on modeling and modeling for a little while. I did modeling for a couple of years, but it was really good. It was just, you know, you're just really a close peg, I think, for a lot of people. But you know, the shots were good, and it actually coincided with the direction that I wanted to go in. You know, like a high quality looking band.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really interesting because was the seed already there? Because it was being a model how you met Jane, wasn't it?
Yeah,
So, but was the seed of what you wanted to do already there?
yeah, it was already planted in my head. Yeah, because I'd seen friends, various friends of mine. Because remember, I went to the Guildhall School of Music and Drama, and above me was Mike Lindup, level 42. He was like a year above me, and there was all these various other people in different bands and stuff that were there. There was actors there. There was, you know, comedians. There was everything, you know. And I was like looking at them, and they were like starting to plot their little route into the business. So everything was already there. You know, even like you said earlier, when I was like 16, 17, the ideas started to come into my head.
I mean, the first ideas are always, I think, are always like, I want to do something like that, like a certain band, like a certain style, and
Right.
not necessarily completely unique at the start. Do you know what I mean? That
Yeah, of course.
uniqueness
Yeah.
comes along the way.
But the
And
most interesting thing was how I got to play with Paul Weller in the Jam, because I was actually outside a post office in Peckham. I think I was coming out looking at something, looking at a paper, and I had my trumpet, my gig bag on my back. And I bumped into Keith Thomas, who was playing saxophone at the time with Second Image. And he said that he needed a trumpet player to go with him to Nomish Studios at the time over in West London to go and play with this punk band, or well, not so much punk band, mod band. And I said, yeah, I'll be up for it. So the next day I met up with him and we went up to the studio, and that's how I met Paul Weller.
so, and the Paul Weller tour came a little bit later, didn't it? Because you met Jane.
No, it came before.
Oh, did it come before? Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah, the Paul Weller tour was like 1980, 81. That was, you know, the start of everything, really, because I hadn't gone to Virgin yet, and I hadn't actually met up with Jane at that time. I was still modelling and stuff and playing trumpet. So I gone to Paul Weller, and he's asked me to do the Trans Global Express tour and the Gift album. So it was after that or during that I decided to hook up with Jane.
Can you remember the first meeting with Jane?
You know what? I used to see her outside the London College of Fashion, which was really strange because she was going in to see her friend, Cheryl, at the time. And we all ended up at this party after Black Designers Fashion Show. And that's how I met her. That was the very first time we had a proper conversation. And the thing was, I was actually hitting on her friend at the time and was trying to persuade her friend to sing. But then her friend told me that Jane was a much, much better singer and you'd be better off getting Jane to start with. And that's how it went.
Although it was very hard back then for anybody who was black to breakthrough in any creative industry.
Yes.
It must have been also quite an exciting time because there was such a sort of mass of people who were bubbling up.
Well, it was such a buzz because you're saying much those people were bubbling up. They were like bands like Light of the World and Central Line that were already established or getting established. And I used to see David Grant walking up and down Oxford Street, trying to sell his single "You're Lying." You know, he was blogging
I
that.
bought that.
Right, there you go. He was blogging that on Oxford Street, which was really, really bizarre. And I thought, wow, this is so exciting. And then I heard about this guy called Richard Branson, who was like selling records out of a phone booth. You know, I'm thinking, wow, all these sort of things were going on, and the label was Virgin Records. And then 6 months down the line now, I'm hearing that Virgin are looking to sign a black man, you know, to diverse from where they were with the Tubular Bells, with Mike Oldfield and all that sort of thing. And they just created this black department that was run by Mick Clark. And Mick Clark was actually just coming out of City Sounds at the time. And I went to City Sounds to try and get some sort of action going on the demos. And they sent me to Mick Clark. So I hooked up with Mick Clark on South Moulton Street at the Hog and the Pound, which is no longer there anymore, you know, by Bond Street. There was used to be a nice little pub. So we hooked up there, and he listened to the demos on a cassette. You know, so we're going back. So with the cassette now, he said, yeah, I really like this. Can you come in within the next couple of days and I'll sign you? And that was it. So it was like we were scrambling around and everything. I was scrambling around to finish off the demos and everything. And we finished the demos at Matthew Fisher's studio from Procol Harum, which is, you know, another turn, up in Croydon, South Croydon there. You know, and then we got the deal. But the minute we got the deal, we're looking at, we went up for a meeting with Virgin, and you're bumping into Boy George, you're bumping into everyone. It's crazy.
So before that, though, you'd obviously auditioned, because I talked to Carl, and he said one thing that really impressed him about you right at the beginning was because you were, I mean, you still are a good-looking man, but then you were a, you know, model and attracting all the women, and he just couldn't believe it. Like, so when he came to the audition, there's you and about 10 other people in this band,
yes,
who weren't really doing a lot, but they all look good, he said.
Yeah, it was that was the thing. That was the thing. When we did start off with about 11 people, and it was Chris and Eddie and Moo that actually told us to cut it down to the basic nucleus of what you needed, because you didn't need 2 keyboard players, you didn't need 700 or 800 background singers and stuff like that, and plus also you just needed just the 3 of you as a nucleus, the most important things. We were the writers, really, so and that's how it went. Yeah.
What appealed to you about Carl back then? Why did you want him?
You know what? It was the fact about Carl was that we actually needed someone that could multitask. You know, because I could multitask, and Jane was the main writer as well, and so we wrote, and we needed like a guitarist or a guitarist that could play bass as well. So that's how we actually got Carl in, because the other bass players we were looking at could only play bass. So that's the reason why he actually was chosen to be in the band.
But it was your band at the start, wasn't
it was my band. It was my band. Yeah, it's definitely my band. It was my concept, my idea, and everything. And that's how I thought that was the best way to go. And that's the rest is history on that one.
Also, of course, I'm just mentioning the name because it's a story as well. You were called Loose End.
Yeah.
And you had to change that name.
Right. Now, the way Carl was saying that the way it was changed was by Pete Waterman. It wasn't Pete Waterman that had the company. It was Mike Reed.
Ah.
Right. Radio 1 Mike Reed that actually had a company called Loose End. And it was Loose End Productions. And he threatened to sue us if we didn't change the name. So we sat down one day and decided to just put an S on the end, and that way we couldn't get sued. And he couldn't do anything about it. He was livid when he heard that, though.
Did he phone you up?
Well, he contacted the management, and the management soon brushed him aside and told him, look, you know, you can't really sue us because it's a different name.
So there you are, you're going to Virgin, you know, and as you say, you're bumping into all these people like Boy George, and you get a deal with Virgin. What was that deal?
Right. The deal initially was just for 3 singles, and then we'd see how it goes after 3 singles. So it was touch and go, because the first single that we had out was In the Sky. Second single was We've Arrived, which was written by different producers, different writers, Tonya Jagby and George Hargreaves. And then the third single we had, Don't Hold Back Your Love, was written by us, but they got in Pete Walsh, the Walsh brothers, who were working on Heaven 17 at the time, another band on Virgin who we knew as well. And, you know, it was like all around the Simple Minds thing as well. They were always there. Simple Minds and Heaven 17. They tried to get us with their producers to actually to do something and tried to turn us onto a more poppy direction. But I didn't think that was going to work. So it was touch and go until Mick Clark had the idea of getting in Nick Martinelli. And it was only with Nick agreeing to do the project that we were given an album deal on Virgin. So that was the start of our album deal.
Did you know it was touch and go?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I totally knew it was touch and go. But at that time, you're buzzing so much that you could know at that time you could easily have gone to another record company, because another record company would have taken you on, because we were started to be known, and we had a little buzz about us around the music business. So you could have easily gone to another record company if Virgin didn't pick up the option. Was
this also the time that you went to Necker Island?
That was a few years later.
Ah, okay.
Right. Yeah, that was on the fourth album. We went to Necker Island. So, but prior to Necker, we'd gone to Philadelphia every single end of summer to write the album, and as a continuation from what we recorded over here.
Yeah, no, I'd say you got to work with Nick Martinelli. So
yes,
what was your, not necessarily working impression at the start, but what was your impression of him and the way he operated? Because
Nick came from a DJ aspect, he used to be a DJ in America. He knew the sound that they were looking for the American market, or for worldwide market, I should say. So he's a bit of a genius, and he just knew it. He knew exactly, after hearing what we were doing, he knew how to turn it and fix it into something that we were relatable to, and something that was easy for us to market.
Don't go away, more of Steve Nichol coming up. Just time for me to ask you to check out the website, popthehistorymakers.com, where there are, I think, about 110 more interviews so far. So there's really something for everyone, and particularly the interview with Carl McIntosh. If you like Steve Nichol, you really would like to see Carl McIntosh and see the different perspectives about the same band. Okay, don't forget to like, subscribe, and if you can, become a member of this channel. It all helps. Now back to Steve Nichol. There was this artist, Brandy Wells, I think, and then which Carl mentioned about a produced sound that he really liked. Was there also that sort of Philly type sound that you were into?
Yeah, there was definitely the Philly Simons, things like that. You know, that sort of style, and also Pieces of a Dream, all those sort of bands, that style, and Dexter Wansel, all of that sort of style, Jones Girls, all that sort of style was there in Philly. Because they all recorded at the same studio, and they all used the same engineers. That's exactly how we got our sound. It was really a Philly sound.
And while you were there, you also could be on other people's tracks, couldn't you?
Yeah, well, my first session was Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes.
What a dream.
I know. He came into the studio and listened to me playing on one of our tracks, and he turned around to Nicky and said, "I want that keyboard player next door on my session. Can I have him after you finish with him today?" Nicky looked at me and said, "There you go, your first American session." So I was next door with Harold Melvin a few hours later.
Yeah, I looked up that record earlier, and you've got your credits on there, you know.
Yes, don't give me up. Yeah.
Brilliant. I love that. So Carl also said that Nick Martinelli was a type that could, you know, if you needed a particular sound or a particular, I don't know, someone that played a different instrument, he would just phone them up and they would be there within 20 minutes.
Exactly. That's the beauty of being in Philadelphia. Anyone you wanted, if you wanted the Jones Girls to do backing on your song, like 999, the Jones Girls are doing the background vocals. He just phoned them up and got them into the studio for that sound. You know, Dexter, he got him in to do keyboard on and the string arrangement. It was just crazy that all these players that you could get. Ron Jennings to do the guitar on Tell Me What You Want. Crazy.
So it sort of gave you ultimate trust in him to create
Well,
something really good out of what you'd started on.
Well, I think you have to. If you're in a different country, in a different atmosphere, and you're learning as well as you're going on. You know, we were very, very young at the time. So you have to put your trust and faith in what he says. And plus also the engineer. I mean, we had a fantastic engineer, Bruce Wadian, brilliant engineer. It was just amazing. Didn't talk much, but what a sound he could get out of that desk. Incredible.
How did the dynamic in the group start to change?
It started to change towards the end, I think. When after the tour or during the tour with Freddie Jackson. And it began to change then because it was very stressful. We were working with Freddie Jackson during the week, and at the weekends we were gigging ourselves, doing our own shows. So we didn't really get much time off. And so you were getting even more sucked into each other's pockets and stuff. And it was just stressful. So I think it's when we came off the plane at Heathrow, we decided, I think that was then where we knew it was going to be the end.
Carl always seems to me to be a perfectionist, and a perfectionist can be difficult. Do you know what I mean? I don't mean that in a mean way.
I wouldn't call Carl a perfectionist. No, he would start ideas and not want to finish them. So he'd go from one idea to another idea. I wouldn't call him a perfectionist. Now, if anyone was more of a perfectionist, it would have been me. Would have been more of the perfection on the perfectionist side from my musical training background. That's what I would have said.
I mean, one thing that, I don't know, from the outside, you were all very young.
Yeah, very, very young. Yeah.
And that's, there's the excitement of getting known, the excitement of success. There's the pressures that come on to you because you're successful and because you start getting famous. I mean, Loose Ends was massive in America. I mean, people forget how massive you were in America.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. You get off the plane and you'd be signing autographs immediately. Your record would be on the radios immediately as you got out of the airport. You'd be hearing your music, without fail. It was crazy. It was absolutely crazy. You couldn't really walk down the street too much.
So how did you deal with those pressures? Because it can't have been easy.
No, it was very, very difficult. Lots of partying. Too much partying, I think. I mean, I can laugh at it now. But at the time, yeah, it was great. You were given everything. You were really looked after. I mean, over looked after, I think. You were protected, if is the right word to say.
Yeah, no, I think that's true. I think record companies sometimes, I mean, I've noticed that people that are overprotected sometimes later can't do much for themselves because they never had to. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
that can be a problem.
Yeah, you were definitely protected by the record company, and they would tell you where to go, what not to go. You'd be going to, you'd be taken to various clubs and meeting certain people that you'd only be looking at it on TV, basically. You'd be on the same headline with Eddie Murphy. That's crazy. And
Eddie Murphy knew your music.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's it. Everyone. Stevie Wonder invited us to his house. We'd be at Stevie Wonder's house after a show. That's crazy.
So what happens at Stevie Wonder's house?
Well, Stevie Wonder's house, he starts singing your music, and that's crazy.
No way.
Yeah, he started singing Gonna Make You Mine to us. And that, to get that accolade, that respect from him, what more do you want?
That's amazing. Why do you think you were so successful in the States and in Britain? It was much more of a battle for you to
Well,
get
you know what
successful?
it is with I. This is what I find about the English DJs. I mean, and don't get me wrong, they're brilliant DJs out there, but they tend to always want to go to the American market and not look after their own, right? They will give the Americans more time a day in terms of, oh, we've got to play this new record that's come out of America, right? They've always wanted to do that as opposed to looking after the new music that's coming right on their doorstep. So the fact that we were successful in America really got some DJs backs up, because it was like, oh, they've gone to America now, so they won't be needing us anymore. I mean, that is the attitude we thought. That's what we were getting. And the fact that we were being very, very successful, as a British band, I thought the British DJs would have been helping us a bit more than they were at the time. You get your records played, but it'd only be up to a certain level. They'd always push the American market first, American band first.
And also, when you were coming up, the pirate radio was only really starting, wasn't it, in terms of playing black music? And so,
but even saying that, even the popular charts would still take the American, like the Capitals and the Radio Ones, would still only take the American artists and not want to pursue their own, which I think is double standards, basically.
I mean, one thing I think that's really fascinating about being part of that Black British movement at that period is that you would have had your idols, and then later on, the younger Black British youth would go to gigs of, all those bands because they would see themselves reflected. Do you know what I mean? It would be the only time they would see themselves reflected on the stage, because it was a complete movement, and it changed everything. How do you feel about being part of that and what you have achieved today when you look back and say, yeah, I was part of that?
Yeah, I mean, I feel really good about it. I feel like I've taught some people something in terms of, there is great talent out there, and it is fantastic being part of that movement, and it's still being reflected today, which is an honor, really, because I'm still being called a legend. I'm still being called this and that. It's good to be part of that situation. It actually means that you have got the respect, and they are looking up to you. And even the younger children, like you're saying now, are still trying to get turned on to this music, which is great. They find it fascinating.
Yeah, because it was totally unique. I mean, I think what Loose Ends did was absolutely unique, more than a lot of other bands, not to put them down.
A lot of bands. I mean, we're all friends with all the other bands, and they always come up to us and come up to me and say to me, I really, really wanted to get your sound, but there was no way I could get it, But then that's down to a combination, I think, of my classical background and maybe Carl's earthy background from Hackney and stuff. We've mirrored the two, or married the two together. And then Jane's vocals as well. It's that sort of situation. It was a unique sound.
You mentioned earlier that the band, I think it was around the time of the fourth album, The Real Chucky Boo, the sort of split happened.
Yeah.
Do you remember the clash when it was, you had a clash between all three of you, an explosion? Because Carl mentioned it to me, and it sounded like, I mean, it's to be honest, it sounded like we all have in our private lives. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean,
on a bigger scale, when it's a band.
There was various times where we clashed. It wasn't mainly just once. I remember one time in our offices with Tony Hall, I clashed with Carl about something, and then didn't really want to be in the band, because I wasn't going to put up with nonsense, and then there was times where we were in the studio and Jane would be late, and then there'd be times where Carl would miss a plane. It's various things would make it, difficult or trying, really.
Yeah,
so it's a case of you sit down, you say to yourself, do I really want to do this anymore?
Do you think it was partly that it fell apart because you were all leading suddenly different lives because of the success?
Yeah, well, obviously with different lives, families and things like that. I personally, I like to, when I've finished an album recording, I'd like to go away. and just sit on a beach and not think about anything for a couple of weeks. That's the way I used to think. And I think Carl wanted to like just go back in the studio, and Jane wanted to like stay in America, you know, so because that's where everything was, the buzz was, you know, hit while the fire's hot, you know what I mean, sort of thing. And that's where it started to go all different ways. And then I got offered something in Paris to go and do a project on Matilda May, French lingerie model. So I went and did that. You know, it's so various things do happen.
When it ended and Carl got the name, was that
Well, that was
acrimonious?
a while after
All right.
he said he got the name. We're not too sure about that yet. But yeah, you know, you can leave it at that. I mean, everyone, to see, the thing is, everybody can still use the name Loose Ends because we are part of Loose Ends. So it's a case of I could use the name Steve Nichol, formerly of Loose Ends, if I wanted to. But I chose to just use Steve Nichol, you know, because I felt I could do that. Jane has gone on to do Jane Eugene, formerly of Loose Ends. Yeah. But, you know, it's not a problem, really. That's how it is. That's how it is.
What do you remember most fondly about being in a studio, and which track? What means the most to you?
There's a couple of tracks, but the one I like the most, my favorite track is So Where Are You? Because the drummer on that track is the same as a drummer that played, he plays with lots of people, Branford Marsalis. He's played with loads of different jazz drum. He's a jazz drummer, played with different jazz artists. But I was jamming with him in the studio at the time, and that was a moment for me because I'd never jammed with a serious drummer like that before. And we went on to write to record So Where Are You? So that's got a fond memory for me, that one.
And also, there was a track that Mariah Carey.
Right. Well, Mariah Carey has covered "Stay a Little While, Child." Now, what she did was she's done it whereby she's sung the whole of "Stay a Little While, Child" and segued into "My All" over the backing track of "Stay a Little While, Child," which is great.
Did you meet her?
Sorry?
Have you met her?
I haven't personally met her. I've spoken to her, but I haven't actually literally met her.
After that part of Loose Ends, how did you reorientate yourself and sort of find something that you wanted to do? What changed?
I've always wanted to give something back in various ways. I know it sounds cliche, but because of my classical background, I decided to go into teaching. So, and I was teaching prior, way back. I was like a peripatetic teacher when I was about 17, which, you know, is still a little bit illegal. You know, at certain schools, I was doing that because of my talent. They thought I could do it so young. So I was teaching in secondary schools, really at 18. I was doing that. And I was teaching for a couple of years prior to that. So when I finished with Loose Ends, I decided I wanted to go back into that sort of thing to rest my head a bit as well. I was still writing and playing on people's albums and stuff like that. But, you know, I decided to give something back.
I think it's interesting that you go to, you know, you had a mentor yourself who was your teacher.
Yeah.
And then you become a mentor. Yeah, exactly. And there is something about being a teacher, being a mentor for other people that you yourself actually get out of it.
Yeah, of course. Of course.
What is that for you?
I get the satisfaction of watching the children progress. I get the satisfaction of seeing them, watching them grow. Even some children I know today are like in their 20s have come up to me and said to me, if it wasn't for me, they wouldn't be doing what they're doing. So I'm quite happy about that.
And you're still continuing that, or you're doing session work and you're doing a mix of things, obviously?
I'm doing a mix of it. I'm doing the teaching. I'm teaching at a nice primary school down in Orpington, where I teach year 1 to 6. So I teach about 650 children over the week. All right. Yeah. So yeah, year 1 to 6 is pre-form entry. So, you know, that's like 90 children a day sort of thing on that in the mornings, and then another 90 in the afternoons. It's crazy. So
how old are they?
They're from 6 years, 5 years old up to 11.
What do you think music gives children?
I think it gives them a better worldly knowledge, a wider knowledge. It gives them respect, and humbling as well. I think music can be very, very humbling. And if you listen to all different types of music across the board, which the children do listen to, the ones I teach, they listen to everything, and they want to know about the business. They want to know the ins and outs and things. A lot of them, the older ones, are mainly interested in how much money they've got. It's quite strange. It is strange, but but then I teach them about things like Charlie Chaplin and how he was a master of all trades. He was a director, producer, screenwriter, actor, and being a composer. I mean, he wrote Smile, right? So he wrote Smile, and when I play that music, they say, "Oh, my mum or my dad plays this." When I tell them that that's come from Charlie Chaplin, and then when he died, he was like 400K in the bank, and was still growing. They can't believe it.
I mean, that's amazing. So you're basically using also your own experience because, as we said at the beginning, you've been a model, you've played with the London Symphony Orchestra, you trumpeter, play the piano. I mean, and obviously, as I've said, one of the really most, I think, influential bands in the 80s and up to 90. And so for them, do they look for your music online?
Exactly. I was coming to that. Yeah, they Google me, and I mean they Google everything, and they come back to me. So during the days, they say to me, "Oh, Mr. Nichol, I looked at you the other day on YouTube." They look you up on YouTube, Spotify, because all the parents have got the Spotify. They've got this, they got that, and they're saying, "Oh, you got 40 odd million hits on Spotify. Oh, you've got this, you've got that. Oh, I watched that interview," and they do actually religiously follow what I'm doing, and they're forever asking me, "Can we play some of your music in the lesson, please?" So I've got to that stage now with my year sixes, which is quite funny.
What do you think, the most important people in your life are mother and father, your mentor at school, your teacher at school. What do you think the most important thing they have installed in you that you have kept with yourself throughout your life?
I've kept like respect is definitely one. Always respect your elders, definitely. Okay. Nothing's ever too hard. You can always try. If not, try again. It's just basically basic manners, good manners. I had a fairly good upbringing, so I would say I had a middle class upbringing, really. If you think about it, even coming from South London, you'd be classed anyway, like that sort of way. Especially in my school that I was at, they wouldn't class me as one of the street boys. They'd class me as a bit more of a middle class boy. So it's all those things that my parents installed in me when I was young.
And for you, do you feel that music has given you a good life?
Yes, it's given me. It was a tough life to start with. Especially, I still always remember cleaning my first apartment in America, in Philadelphia, in the projects. That's the first place where we stayed. We cleaned our own apartments.
What, they gave you an apartment and you had to clean it?
Yeah.
And
yeah,
you were recording. You were in the recording studio.
Yeah, when we were recording, that was our initiation. We had to clean our own apartments. We all had an apartment each, and we had to clean our own apartments. We paid our own bills. Everything. Yeah, we had to do that. That's the way that is the way you are taught. So all that sort of thing. I've always lived by myself up until getting married first time and stuff like that. Just recently got married again, but it's always been installed in me that you have to be able to look after yourself. So you have to have a strong mind.
And today, apart from teaching, you do session work.
Yeah, I played on a couple of people's albums. The most recent one, I did like Lee John's Utopia album. I wrote 2 songs and played on that album. for him. I did Secrets and Do the Right Thing. Those are both my songs. And I've just done a song on Dimmy's album, Dimmy Dimopoulos, Right Time. I have that song, Magic Dance Floor. I'm playing the grand piano on that one. And I've just done an EP, which I've just brought out. The EP is called What the Heart Wants. And I've done it with George Anderson, Shack Attack. So George and myself go back a long way. We go back to the College of Young Musicians when we were about 12, 13, when he was playing bass trombone. And he was used to play bass trombone in a brass ensemble that I used to play with him on a Tuesday night. And from that, I didn't really get to see him much, but we kept in contact. And I used to follow his Shack Attack career, and he was following mine. And so I got together with him recently, and over lunch, and we decided to do this project. And basically, he said, if we're doing this project, Debbie Bracknell has got to come on board because she's a brilliant songwriter as well. And I know Debbie from her vocals, what she does. She's like a super session singer, really. She's everywhere. She's always on the Prince's things, and she used to do all the stuff at Buckingham Palace and stuff like that. So Debbie came on board. So the three of us were on this album. So basically, Debbie is the vocalist, and George and myself did all the music, and we had a couple of guest players on the album as well.
It's really fascinating because when you mentioned it, your face lit up.
What, the EP?
Yeah, no, absolutely, because it was like this. It's obviously really, really a special moment for you to create and put out your own music again, isn't it?
Yeah, bringing out my own music again. It's fascinating. I think, I wanted to hear what the people are going to think about it. And so far, so good. The reception's been absolutely excellent. The single is What the Heart Wants. We've got 3 other tracks on there. We've got Senorita. So What the Heart Wants is generally just a love story. Whatever you want, you should go after it. Yeah, follow your heart. Senorita is about all the female heroines that have gone in the past in the artistic world, like Dorothy Dandridge's, all these type of people that have been influential on my life a lot as well, because I'm watching films and stuff like that. I'm a big film buff. Then we've got Children, which is a song about the children that I taught and are going to teach in the past, and all the children in the world that are growing up, because they are the future. And then the other track, What the Hell, is literally a song about what the hell. Just go for it.
So instead of going on Oxford Street,
no,
you should take these records to the school.
Yeah, I mean, basically, you don't need to take them to school. Yeah, they just go onto Spotify. Yeah. You just tell them the link. Tell them it's on all platforms. And the next thing you know, they're all downloading it. So.
Well, Steve Nichol, it's been brilliant talking to you. And I've loved the fact that you're so excited and really seem to be having a great time releasing new music. But I really want to thank you, because I think it's really important to thank people who add to the creative culture, and particularly loose ends were a big part of my era, as it were. The
I probably used to see you down the clubs.
Probably did.
Yeah,
I'm not sure if I can go to a club anymore. Feels too distant now.
No, there's still a few you can go in and chill.
Exactly. Well, Steve Nichol, thanks very much. It's been brilliant to see you, and I wish you so much success.
Steve. It's been a pleasure as well. Thank you.
Up there is an interview I recommend. Down there is where you can find all the podcast interviews, and here is where you can connect.